Did you seriously think you could move your parents into our house without consulting me? I asked, my voice shaking with a mix of anger and disbelief. Elvin, my husband of 6 years, looked up from his laptop with a smirk that I had grown to hate. Oh, Ruby, don't be so dramatic. It's just for a while, and besides, you don't really have a say in this. His words felt like a slap in the face. This house, a lovely two-story home in a quiet suburb, wasn't just any house. It was the home my grandparents had left me, where I wanted to raise our son, Mike, away from the negativity of Elvin's family. Remember, the house is in my name, I replied, my hands clenched into fists at my sides. Elvin's smug look faded, and he looked uncertain for a moment. Our 2-year-old son, Mike, walked into the room, and I forced a smile for his sake. He didn't know about the tension between us. His chubby hands reached up for me, and I picked him up, kissing his forehead, trying to calm down. I'm not okay with this, Elvin. Your parents have never respected me or our space. Why now? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Elvin shrugged, which made me even more frustrated. They're family, Ruby. You wouldn't understand. Family. The word echoed in my mind like a taunt. My own family, who ran a small but loved coffee shop in town, had always been my safe haven. The doorbell rang, interrupting our argument. Through the peephole, I saw them, Elvin's parents, with suitcases in hand, ready to invade our life. My heart sank. Fine, Elvin, let them in, but this isn't over, I said, handing Mike to him before opening the door. Ruby, darling, Elvin's mother said, walking past me without even looking at me. His father followed, a stern man who had barely acknowledged me since our wedding day. As they settled in, making themselves comfortable in my living room, I felt the familiar sense of being invaded. This was just the beginning, I realized. But as I watched them, something inside me changed. I was done being the obedient daughter-in-law, always bending to their wishes. I went into the kitchen, my mind racing. This was my home, my safe place, and I was ready to fight for it. The next few days became a blur of unwelcome changes. Elvin's mother, Elaine, had a way of making her presence felt in the most suffocating way. She rearranged my kitchen, criticized my parenting, and acted like our home was hers. Mike shouldn't be eating that, Ruby. It's not healthy, Elaine said one morning as I prepared Mike's breakfast. I held back a sharp response, feeling the familiar sting of her judgment. He's fine, Elaine. It's just cereal, I said, shaking my head. In our house, we believe in a proper diet. You really should learn. Her comments were like needles, each one poking at my patience. Elvin, as usual, was no help, lost in his work and unaware of the growing tension. One evening, as I put Mike to bed, Elaine barged into his room. He's still not sleeping through the night? You must be doing something wrong, she said. Her words were a blow to my confidence, making me feel like a bad mother. I'm doing the best I can, I snapped, unable to hold back my frustration. Your best isn't good enough. Maybe if you had a real job and some structure in your life. I felt a surge of anger. This is my house, Elaine. You're just a guest here. Don't forget that. Her laugh was cold and dismissive. Oh dear, Elvin never mentioned how out of touch you are. This is his house too, and as his mother, I have every right to be here. The next day, I hit my limit when I found Rose in Mike's room, going through his drawers. What do you think you're doing? I demanded, my voice shaking with anger. I'm just organizing. This room is a mess, she said without even looking at me. That's it. I want you out of my house now, I shouted, feeling a mix of anger and desperation. Elaine turned to face me, looking surprised but not sincere. Your house? Oh, sweetie, you're just the wife. This is Elvin's house too, and he wants us here. I stormed out of the room, overwhelmed by thoughts of Alvin's betrayal, Elaine's intrusion, and how they ignored my feelings. It was all too much. I was tired of being pushed around and having my home taken over by people who didn't respect me. That night, as I lay in bed, I started to make a plan. I was going to take back control of my life, my home, and my son's future. Elvin and his parents had crossed a line, and they needed to understand that I wouldn't be their doormat anymore. The fight was just beginning, and I was ready. A few days later, during a tense dinner, Elvin dropped a bombshell. "My parents need to stay with us longer. Their house is being renovated," he said casually, as if it were no big deal. I felt my blood boil. "Longer, Elvin? We never even talked about them staying here in the first place." He shrugged, avoiding my gaze. "It's just for a few more weeks." "What's the big deal?" "The big deal is that your mother treats me like an outsider in my own home," I shouted, my frustration boiling over. Rose, overhearing us, jumped in with her usual condescending tone. "Ruby, you're overreacting. We're family. You should be more accommodating." Their words only made me more determined. I wasn't going to let them walk all over me anymore. It was time to fight back. The next morning, I called my brother John, who had always been my support. "They're taking over my life, John. I can't handle it anymore," I said, trying to hold back tears. John's voice was strong and encouraging. "Ruby, you need to stand up for yourself. Don't let them bully you. It's your house, so you make the rules." His words gave me the push I needed. I decided to confront Elvin, but this time, I would be ready. I gathered proof of Elaine's overbearing behavior, the messed-up kitchen, the disturbed routines, and her constant belittling comments. The day of the confrontation arrived. I waited until Elaine and Elvin were in the living room. "We need to talk now," I said, keeping my voice steady even though I was furious inside. Elvin looked up, surprised. "What's this about, Ruby?" he asked. "It's about your parents, Elvin. Their constant interference and disrespect for my boundaries have to stop today," I said, holding up my list of complaints. Rose scoffed. "This is ridiculous. We're just trying to help." "Help by undermining me at every turn? By treating me like I don't matter in my own home?" I shot back, my anger clear. Elvin shifted uncomfortably. "Ruby, they're my parents. We can't just kick them out," he said. "No, Elvin. They're guests in my home, and they've stayed too long. Either they leave, or I do, with Mike," I said firmly, my determination clear. The room fell silent, and the weight of my words hung in the air. I saw the realization in Elvin's eyes, but it was Rose who spoke first. "You wouldn't dare," she hissed, losing her calm demeanor. "Watch me," I replied, my voice steady with resolve. That night, Elvin's parents packed their bags. As they left, Rose gave me a bitter look. "You'll regret this, Ruby," she warned. But as the door closed behind them, I felt a huge relief. It was the first step in taking back my life, and I was ready for whatever came next. After Rose and her husband left, the house was eerily quiet. Elvin's attitude turned cold and distant, and he barely interacted with me. I found comfort in a piece of my home and the happy laughter of Mike. One evening, as Mike played with his toys, Elvin said, "I have to go on a business trip. I'll be gone for a few weeks." His tone was indifferent, as if his career mattered more than our troubled relationship. "Fine," I replied shortly, hiding my relief at the thought of his absence. After Elvin left, the house felt different, almost freeing. I began to undo the changes Rose had made, each small fix feeling like a win. But everything changed when I found a series of emails on Elvin's laptop, which he had left open. They revealed an affair, an ongoing betrayal that hurt more than his mother's demeaning comments. I was filled with anger, pain, and a deep sense of betrayal. It was time for Elvin to face the consequences of his actions. I started planning carefully, making sure that Elvin and his family would be held accountable for their deceit and manipulation. The first step was to get my financial and legal affairs in order. I contacted a lawyer, explained my situation, and began the process of filing for divorce. Next, I focused on the house, which represented my grandparents' legacy and my independence. I called a real estate agent. "I want to sell the house quickly and quietly," I told her. The real estate agent looked surprised but noticed the urgency in my voice. "Are you sure about this, Ruby?" "It's a big decision," she said. "I've never been more sure of anything," I answered, feeling strong and determined. After the betrayal, the house went on the market, and within days, offers started coming in. The thought of Elvin coming back to find he had lost his control over everything gave me a grim satisfaction. During this time, I reconnected with my family, finding strength in their support. "We're here for you no matter what," my father told me as I watched Mike play, unaffected by the chaos around him. I made a quiet promise to protect his happiness, no matter what. Elvin's return was approaching, but I was no longer the woman he had left behind. I was ready to face him, equipped with the truth and a plan to take back my life. When the day came for Elvin to return, the tension in the air was thick. I had imagined this moment many times, and although I was prepared, my heart raced as I heard his key turning in the lock. "Ruby, I'm home," Elvin called out, his voice echoing through the now changed space. I walked out of the kitchen, standing tall. "Welcome back, Elvin. We need to talk," I said firmly. He looked around, noticing the changes I had made. "What's going on?" "The house looks different." I stayed calm. "I sold the house, Elvin. It's no longer ours." His face showed shock and anger. "You did what?" "You can't just sell our house without telling me," he argued. "It's my house, Elvin, and after what I found out, I don't think you get to say any more," I replied, my voice calm but filled with anger. He scoffed, trying to hide his surprise. "What are you talking about?" "The affair, Elvin. I know everything." I watched as his calm act fell apart. He tried to deny it, but it didn't last long. "Ruby, it's not what you think," he begged. "I think it's exactly what it looks like. You betrayed me and our family," I responded, the hurt clear in my voice. Elvin went from shocked to angry. "You're overreacting. We can work through this," he said. "There's no we anymore, Elvin." "I filed for divorce," I said, handing him the papers. The conversation turned into a blur of accusations and denials, but I stood firm. The man I had married was gone, replaced by someone driven by selfish desires. As he stormed out, promising to fight the divorce, I felt a mix of freedom and worry. I had taken the first step toward a new life, but I knew the struggle wasn't over. In the weeks that followed, everyone learned about our situation. Elvin's parents, who had been so confident and overbearing, were now caught up in the fallout from their son's actions. They tried to contact me, but I ignored them completely. I focused only on Mike and finalizing the divorce. When the court hearing day arrived, Elvin looked defeated, finally realizing the gravity of what he had done. The judge granted me the divorce and custody of Mike, and I felt a sense of justice. Elvin's attempts to reconcile after the hearing were ignored. "You made your choice, Elvin. Now live with it," I said, walking away from him for the last time. News of our divorce and Elvin's affair spread quickly, damaging his reputation and relationships. His parents, who had once been proud and judgmental, were now shunned by people who had previously respected them. As I walked out of the courthouse holding Mike's hand, I realized this was not just an end but a new beginning, a fresh start for both of us, free from deceit and manipulation. The future was uncertain, but it was ours to shape. Life after the divorce felt like coming out of a long, dark tunnel into the light. I had regained control not just of the house, which was now sold, but of my life. Mike, happily unaware of the adult issues, thrived on the love and stability I gave him. My days were busy but satisfying, focused on rebuilding our lives and managing the coffee shop, which had become my safe haven. Still, the shadow of Elvin and his parents lingered. One day, as I was closing the shop, Elvin appeared, looking disheveled and desperate, so different from the composed man I once knew. "Ruby, please, I need to talk to you," he begged, his eyes searching mine for any trace of the compassion that used to be there. I hesitated, feeling a mix of emotions at the sight of him. "What do you want, Elvin?" I asked, trying to keep my frustration in check. "I can't afford the alimony and child support. I lost my job because of the scandal, and my parents, they are broke too," he admitted, his words hitting hard. "That's not my problem, Elvin. You made your choices, and now you have to deal with the consequences," I said firmly, closing the door on our shared past for good. As I walked away, leaving Elvin behind, I felt a sense of closure. The journey had been painful, full of betrayal and heartache, but it had led me to a place of strength and independence. Life moved on. Mike grew up, his laughter and curiosity bringing joy to our home. The coffee shop thrived, becoming a warm, welcoming place for the community. I found happiness in simple pleasures: the smell of fresh coffee, Mike's giggles, and the support of friends and family. Elvin and his parents became distant memories, their story a lesson on the consequences of betrayal and selfishness. My journey had taught me about resilience and the importance of standing up for myself. As I locked up the shop that evening, I looked at the sky painted with hues of orange and pink as the day ended. I smiled, holding Mike's hand tightly. Our future was uncertain, but it was bright. We were moving forward, one step at a time, into a new chapter of our lives.
Sophia will recount how I took control of my life and put a stop to my husband Sanders' destructive influence. For privacy reasons, I'll be using pseudonyms. As a prominent lawyer in my state, anonymity is crucial for various reasons. Let's not delve into the intricacies of Ma and Sanders' love story. We fell in love, got married, and eventually divorced. The love, it seemed, wasn't reciprocal, as Sanders cheated on me. The signs were apparent: avoidance, excessive time outside, and frequent business trips. Though I wasn't involved in his sizable business, despite my success as a lawyer, Xander considered me a failure due to earning less than him. One day, during another one of his supposed business trips, I decided to investigate. I discovered a secret Facebook account on his old laptop, confirming my suspicions. He was cheating with a beautiful woman, someone he found more attractive than me, often criticizing my appearance. Heartbroken and angered, I confronted him immediately. "Sandra, are you cheating on me?" "I have proof," I declared. Sandra callously responded, "Sophia, you're just not that interesting anymore. You're always engrossed in pointless cases, neglecting me. Besides, you're not a supermodel who can captivate me with looks alone." Confused, I retorted, "What are you talking about, Sander? I have a demanding job, and you knew that when we got married. I haven't neglected you. It's you who stopped coming home and refused to communicate, and that's how I discovered Sanders' affair. When I finally decided to confront him, I anticipated a degree of remorse from him, but the cold response I received caught me off guard. He shifted all the blame onto me, justifying his cheating, a claim that held no validity. Refusing to be falsely accused, I pointed out the flaws in his accusations. Instead of defending his position, he turned cold once more and nonchalantly revealed that he was relieved I had discovered his affair. In a chilling tone, Xander declared, "Good that you found out, Sophia. I no longer have to hide my beautiful girlfriend. She and I will have a perfect life together after I divorce your useless self. Finally, I will marry someone who's worthy of me and my name." His words hit me like a ton of bricks, sending a cold shiver down my spine. As he spoke of divorce, he not only insulted me, but also asserted that I was not good enough for him, accusing me of being a bad wife. He showed no remorse for his affair and even boasted about how a mistress would make a better spouse. Tears streamed down my face as he demeaned me, proclaiming his affair with pride. This was the man I had loved for over a decade, and his words left me shattered. Through my tears, I asked, "How could you say that, Sander? All these years I've been beside you through thick and thin, honoring my vows and valuing you above all else." His callous response cut deep, dismissing my worth. "Well, Sophia, it doesn't matter anymore. You're just not right for me. I'm now a proud business owner, and a woman with average looks and a pretentious law degree won't do me any good." Feeling utterly demeaned, I protested, "How could you, Sander? I'm a capable woman, even if I don't fit your narrow definition of beauty. I've been a good wife to you, and now you're contemplating divorce." Correcting me, he stated coldly, "I'm not contemplating divorce, Sophia. I already decided to divorce you. I'm done. I don't want to be with you anymore. I will file soon and have already hired a great lawyer. You better move out before I come home. I don't want to see your ugly face anymore." A few hours after Xander hung up on me, he sent the divorce papers through a friend who looked at me sympathetically. I numbly accepted the papers, shut the door, and cried miserably, letting the reality of my wasted years with a horrible man sink in. However, I decided I wouldn't let this break me. I was a strong woman who would take control of her life and teach Sander a lesson. When Sander's friend delivered the papers, he mentioned that Sander had talked about drawing out the divorce. Initially puzzled, it dawned on me that we had a prenup. Sander had insisted that I was entitled to half of his business if he cheated, something I had overlooked in my emotional turmoil. It made sense why Xander wanted to prolong the divorce. He hoped I would give up my rightful share. Determined not to let go of what was rightfully mine, I immediately called his lawyer and set up an appointment. Within 2 days, I moved out of Sander's house and into my childhood home, which was in my name. I texted Xander that I had already moved my belongings, asserting, "I took my ugly face and body out of your Dan house." Sander responded, boasting about his lawyer's reputation, but I calmly warned him, "I won't give you my business, that's for sure. For now you will stay away from me." Determined to uphold the prenup, I was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. "I don't want to talk to you. You can only speak to me through my lawyers now, and I expect you to empty my house." Xander's words ignited a surge of boiling rage within me. It's astonishing how anger and hatred can fuel one's determination when faced with such utter contempt. My mind cleared, and I couldn't help but almost laugh at Sander's ignorance. He had no clue who he was up against, doubtful that his lawyer, Jake, knew either. I arranged a meeting with him at a cafe. Upon seeing me, Jake began to visibly tremble, only calming down upon recognizing me. He seemed confident, but not enough. Jake was a decent lawyer, but he hadn't anticipated facing off against someone like me. Sander never considered me influential, so Jake was utterly unprepared for our encounter. Jake appeared nervous and his hands shook, but I refrained from further intimidation. He wasn't to blame for my predicament. "Hello, Jake. Nice to see you here," I greeted, noticing his surprise. "If you have any doubts, let me clear them for you. Yes, I am the wife." "Ma'am, I'm so sorry. I wasn't expecting you to show up," Jake stammered, flustered by my presence. "The surnames don't match because I got married after I received my law degree. I used my maiden name for official purposes," I explained. "Ah, I see," Jake muttered, visibly uncomfortable. "So I'm guessing you want to drag out this case. That's what my client has told me." "Your client has been misleading you, Jake. He's the one who wants to prolong this case. Isn't that what he told you?" I confronted him directly, knowing my reputation as a lawyer spoke volumes. Jake squirmed under my scrutiny, accustomed to asking the right questions. I didn't mince words. You don't have to answer that, Jake. I've known Xander for over a decade. I married that idiot, for God's sake. I know what goes through his thick head, I said, concerned for Jake's predicament. I decided to enlighten him. Since I know you and it's not fair on you, I'll tell you the truth about this divorce, I continued. What do you mean, ma'am? Jake inquired, clearly taken aback. Did my dear husband mention to you that he cheated on me? I asked pointedly, watching Jake's expression for confirmation. His reaction spoke volumes, confirming my suspicions once again, and Jake was caught off guard by my revelation. I won't lie to you guys. It did sting and hurt my ego to admit to my colleague that I have been cheated on. It's not a pleasant experience. However, I knew better than to betray my emotions, no matter how humiliated I felt. I still had the upper hand, and I was well aware of that, I explained. Jay, on the other hand, didn't know, he said. Oh no, I don't think my client has told me about that. But he did warn me that, in his words, you would make some baseless accusations because you want to ruin him. Oh, you poor thing, Jake. Your client has played you like a fiddle. Although it might make you happy to know that Xander thinks you are one of the best lawyers out there, well, that's a big compliment, but I will never measure up to you, ma'am, Jake confessed. I wish he had told me that his wife also practices law. He only told me that you work at a law firm. My husband never really took my accomplishments seriously. He had a habit of undermining my work and influence. It was foolish of me to stay with him this long. However, it was smart of me to sign the prenup to save my butt, I shared. Jake was completely taken aback by the mention of the word prenup. He looked shocked, and the term seemed foreign to him. I didn't need to be a rocket scientist to know that he had been ambushed again. Xander had conveniently forgotten to mention the prenup to Jake, perhaps hoping I had forgotten about it. Well, who knows? It didn't matter since the word of the prenup was out there, I continued. Jake was frazzled. There's a prenup in this marriage. Your husband hadn't mentioned that. Do you have any proof, ma'am? Jake inquired. Oh, I do have plenty of proof, Jake. I brought the papers along. I had a feeling that Xander would try to get out of dealing with the consequences of his actions. Well, not on my watch, I assured him. I would really like to see the papers, ma'am. Also, I think I would need to see proof of his affair if you have any, Jake requested. Don't worry, Jake. I brought along everything. Like I said, it isn't me who wants to drag out this divorce. The sooner it happens, the better it is for me, I replied. I handed over all the evidence to Jake, from messages to pictures and documents. I had all the proof right in my handbag, casually giving them to Jake, knowing that the case would always go in my favor. Jake studied each and every document thoroughly before signing and looking rather defeated. He then looked at me and said, I see that you have solid proof of everything, ma'am. I had no idea about all of these things. I figured that out, Jake. Also, I know how difficult it is to work with unreliable clients, especially when the opposite party has an equally strong lawyer for their case. I sympathized. You're right about that, ma'am. I think that's all I needed to talk about today. I believe I need to have a serious conversation with my client before I decide to proceed with his case. I'm sure someone will contact you soon, although I can't say that it will be me, Jake concluded. I thanked him for his time and proceeded to walk out of the cafe. I went straight to work and started to prepare my own documents for the divorce. All the lingering sadness was gone. Now there was this rage within me that was driving me to make sure Xander suffered for what he had done, and I knew he had no way out of this mess he had created. It took Xander one day to get back to me. He called me on my number despite telling me not to contact him directly. It was funny, but not surprising. I knew he would find himself in this situation. When I answered his call, he sounded very pissed off. What the hell did you say to my lawyer, Sophia? He demanded. My, look who's calling after telling me to stay away. Now what happened with your lawyer, Xander? Stop playing around, Sophia. Tell me what you told him that made him quit today, Your lawyer quit today. How sad, Xander. I guess you should have been upfront about your situation and who they would be fighting against. You don't know what you're saying. You are a freaking nobody. I won't let you take away my family business, Xander exclaimed. Oh, I would like to see you try, Xander. I will hire a better lawyer and doubt you. Just wait and watch. I will destroy you in court. You will come to me begging for mercy, I retorted. Well, sounds like a plan, Xander. Good luck with that. But a word of advice from a lawyer. Remember to tell your new lawyer about your affair and the prenup, I said. When Sandra simply hung up on me, it made me chuckle. He was in deep trouble, but still didn't know it. He would try every lawyer in town and see if anyone would represent him. I am a known name here, so people know not to mess with me. Plus, anyone stupid enough to believe his lies would be dragged down to reality when I presented them with my ammo. Sanders said that he would make me beg for mercy. I knew that it would be a matter of time before he would come begging at my door. I was right in thinking that Xander would be back begging at my door. He literally had no other choice. One fine morning while I was getting ready for work, there was a knock at my door. I was a little confused about who showed up at such an odd time. Imagine my surprise when I opened the door and found my soon-to-be ex-husband looking forlorn and weary. I invited him in because I didn't want the scene outside my home. I was already dealing with enough. When he came inside, I said, "Make it quick, Xander. I don't have enough time to waste on you. I don't even know why you're here. We were supposed to strictly communicate through lawyers only." "Yeah, about that. I haven't found a good divorce lawyer yet," Xander admitted. "Oh, that's sad for you, Xander. You better hurry up because I hear that your mistress has been dying to marry you. I'm not worried about her anymore," I remarked. "Listen, Sophia, we need to talk. You have been sabotaging my lawyer so that they wouldn't take my case. That is very unfair," Xander accused. I immediately laughed when he said that. I couldn't believe that Xander would have the audacity to pin the entire blame on me. This once again showed how little he valued my profession. He thought that just because he was willing to throw money, people would pull at his feet. Oh dear, that's an amazing joke, Xander. Let me just clear that misconception for you. I haven't been sabotaging anything. It's your stupidity that's causing trouble, I explained. I don't understand. What did I even do? Xander questioned. Should I remind you how you lied to your lawyers about the affair and the prenup? That is enough to make them look like fools in court. Do you think lawyers would jump at representing unreliable clients like you? Besides, I will admit that my name will make a lot of people walk away. You may consider me to be useless, but I actually do have a good name in this profession, I clarified. Yes, I know that now, Sophia. I've tried being open with lawyers too, but none of them are willing to help me, Xander admitted. That's what happens when you try to go against an ironclad prenup. You really should have thought your affair through, Xander. Not that it matters now. The damage is done. No sane lawyer would fight for your cause, I stated. You'll be giving me half of your business, I added. Xander's facial expression said it all. He didn't want to lose his business. I mean, that's why he tried to pick a good lawyer and drag out the divorce. He wanted to keep me hanging long enough until I would snap and just leave him alone without demanding half of his company. After a few days, it became clear to him that no one would take his side. Hell, he was even finding it hard to find any lawyer who would go against me. So he did what he thought was his last resort. He started to cry and beg. Sophia, you know how much this business means to me. Please don't do this. You can take everything else, but please don't ask to split the business. Why not, Xander? You are the one who put in the clause of splitting the business in case you cheated. You think I will give up my rights that easily? I deserve it after the betrayal you threw in my face. It was all a mistake, Sophia, believe me. I have actually put my relationship on hold because I know what a big mistake it was. Maybe, just maybe, we can give this marriage a try. I can say for sure that this hurdle will only make us stronger, Xander pleaded. Sanders's words made me laugh out loud again. The audacity of this man was unmatched by anyone I knew. I really didn't know what to say. He was actually asking to get back together, as if I would be stupid enough to do that. I did know that he had put a pause on his relationship with his mistress. The rumors were out that the mistress was not happy, and neither was Xander. But if he thinks this will make me go back to him, he is dead wrong. You must be delusional for suggesting something like that, Xander. I didn't come this far in life by being utterly stupid. I know that you want to get back to me because you don't want to split your business. Sophia, we were happy together. Let's just look past this one time and restart our marriage. I will cut off my mistress, I swear, Xander continued. There's no reason to do that, Xander. Believe me, that woman is going to start running once she finds out that you won't be very rich after the divorce. As for me, this is my golden chance to get out of this sham of a marriage. I must thank you for showing your true colors before we had kids. Now you will reap what you have sown. With that, I was pretty much done with my piece. I immediately stopped talking while Xander kept begging and pleading with me not to take his business. It was a rather pathetic scene, but it didn't move me at all. Instead, it made me think of the times I went to bed crying because of this piece of exploitative man I called my husband. Seeing Xander in a vulnerable place only gave me satisfaction and completed my revenge. Now I simply needed a clean break to start fresh. Well, I definitely got more than what I had bargained for. Karma hit Xander hard and fast. He tried for weeks to change my mind and make me come back home. I turned a blind eye to everything simply because I wasn't interested in his drama. I was ready to move on. Since he had filed for divorce already, I hired someone from my firm to represent me. I'm not a divorce lawyer, so I couldn't do it myself. Besides, I wanted as minimal interaction with him as possible. After a month of trying to change my mind, he was forced to get a lawyer and ask for a clean break. He knew that if I took the case to court, he would only face humiliation and ultimately waste money on lawyers appointed by the court. So he receded and asked for a mutual split. The prenup made it super easy for me to get the divorce. Of course, I had plenty of proof to show everyone that Xander cheated. As per the prenup, he was supposed to give up half of his business to me. He wasn't happy, but there was no way out, so he signed over half of it to me. We did give him an offer to buy me out, but he had no money. Now, why would a big business owner like Xander have no money, you ask? Well, he had spent it all on his mistress, who is now not taking his calls or texts. I guess she figured out that he won't be rich anymore. But now no one is willing to date her because they know what a gold digger she is. What goes around comes around, I guess. Well, the mistress was the least of Xander's troubles. With half of his business gone, his earnings were severely reduced. He had to sell his house because he didn't have much money to maintain it or even pay the mortgage properly. He's currently renting a condo, which is a serious downgrade from the big mansion he stayed at. He did try to get back with me again in the hopes of regaining full control of his business. Well, safe to say that is never happening. He now either has to continue the way it is or manage to save enough money to buy me out. If you want to know about me, I'm actually doing pretty well. I have appointed someone to take care of my share of Xander's business, and so far things have been amazing. I ended up upgrading my lifestyle by buying a new mansion due to my combined income from law practice and business. Things are going well. I'm living my best life, and I honestly couldn't be happier. All in all, the divorce played out well for me. Instead of getting played by my ex-husband and his mistress, I ended up ruining their lives and bettering mine.
It was early morning in Portland, Oregon, when I first began to sense something was off. The city was still quiet, and I was in the kitchen, brewing coffee, when David walked in. For once, he was dressed in a suit. I hadn't seen him in anything other than sweatpants and old shirts since he lost his job as an IT specialist a few months back. "Big day?" I asked, trying to sound casual. David looked up, his face a mask of forced cheerfulness. "Yeah, I have a job interview today." Fingers crossed. I smiled, though my mind was already buzzing. It had been a while since we had any news that wasn't just about scraping by. But as I looked at David, something felt uneasy. His sudden enthusiasm felt too rehearsed, too out of place. The day dragged on, and as evening fell, I found myself waiting anxiously for him to come home. When he finally walked through the door, I could tell something was wrong. The sharp scent of alcohol and an unfamiliar perfume clung to him. My heart sank. David stumbled slightly as he hung up his coat, and I could see the disheveled state of his hair and clothes. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but my instincts were screaming at me. I had to know what was going on. Later that night, while David was in the shower, I found myself in his study. I hesitated for a moment before picking up his phone. It was a risk, but I needed answers. With shaking hands, I scrolled through his messages, and there it was, a string of texts between David and Rebecca, my closest friend. The messages were intimate and full of promises that I had never heard before. Rebecca was someone I trusted deeply. We had been friends for years, shared countless secrets, and supported each other through thick and thin. And now, here she was, betraying me with my own husband. I felt a cold fury rising inside me, mingled with a sense of betrayal so profound it left me almost numb. David had used my business credit card to buy gifts for Rebecca. There were receipts for luxury items, which I later found stashed in his desk drawer. He had been financing their affair with the money I had earned, money that was supposed to secure our family's future. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, trying to process everything. Ella, our 8-year-old daughter, was asleep in the next room, unaware of the storm brewing just outside her door. I worried about her, about how this would affect her. She was perceptive, mature for her age. I knew she would sense the tension, and that thought made my heart ache. Weeks passed, and I tried to keep up appearances. I focused on work and Ella's routine, but in the background, I was quietly gathering evidence. I followed David one day and saw him with Rebecca at a high-end store, laughing and shopping together. The sight was a cruel confirmation of what I had already discovered. During this time, my brother Mark came to visit. He had always been my rock, and his presence was a much-needed comfort. Mark was completely unaware of the affair. He had come to help with Ella while I juggled work and the emotional turmoil. One evening, while Mark was playing with Ella, I took the opportunity to confront David. My hands trembled as I spoke, but I needed him to know that I was no longer in the dark. David, still in denial, tried to deflect, but I had already seen too much. "Ella knows something is wrong," I said, my voice breaking. "She's been talking to Mark. She's worried." David's face paled, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of guilt in his eyes. But then he masked it with anger. "You're overreacting. It's not what you think." But I knew the truth, and as painful as it was, I had to protect Ella. The holidays were approaching, and I decided it was time to take action. With Mark's help, I began packing up our things. The plan was to move to a new home with Ella and start fresh. The night before David was supposed to leave for a getaway with Rebecca, I knew I had to confront him one last time. I was determined, resolute. I had to find a way to end this chapter of my life and ensure that Ella and I could move forward, free from the shadows of betrayal that had loomed over us for too long. The suspense was unbearable, but the truth was clear. It was time for a new beginning. The days that followed my discovery were filled with a constant, gnawing anxiety. I kept everything on a tight leash, trying to maintain normalcy for Ella's sake. Meanwhile, the plan to leave David was taking shape, and I couldn't wait for the right moment to put it into action. The night before David was set to leave for his getaway with Rebecca, I felt a mix of dread and determination. I knew I had to confront him about the affair. The truth couldn't stay hidden any longer, and I needed him to know that I was fully aware of his betrayal. As David came home that evening, I could see he was excited about the trip. His bags were packed, and he was chattering about how much fun he expected to have. I tried to keep my composure, though inside, my emotions were a tangled mess. "Are you sure you don't need anything else?" I asked, trying to sound casual. David barely looked up. "Nope, I think I'm all set. Can you make sure Ella's in bed by the time I leave?" I nodded, fighting the urge to reveal what I knew. As he busied himself with last-minute preparations, I made my way to the bedroom where I had hidden all the evidence, receipts, messages, and records of his lavish spending on Rebecca. When David was finally ready to leave, I knew it was time. I took a deep breath and called him into the living room. "David, we need to talk." His face tightened with a mix of irritation and curiosity. "What's this about?" I sat down, feeling the weight of my next words. "I know about you and Rebecca. I know you've been using my business credit card to pay for things for her. I saw the messages on your phone, and I followed you the other day." David's expression shifted from annoyance to shock. "Jessica, Save it," I interrupted. "I've seen enough. I don't need any more excuses. I'm done with this." His face flushed with a mixture of guilt and anger. "You don't understand. I didn't mean for it to get this far. I thought." "No," I said firmly. "You made your choices, and now you'll face the consequences." David tried to backpedal, offering hollow apologies and justifications. "Please, Jess, don't do this. I was going to end things with Rebecca. I just needed more time." I shook my head. "It's too late for that. Ella's already noticed that something's wrong. I can't let her be exposed to this any longer." His eyes widened in alarm. "Ella knows." "Yes," I said, my voice steady. "She's been asking questions and talking to my brother. She knows enough to understand that something is deeply wrong." David slumped into a chair, clearly defeated. "What are you going to do?" "I'm moving out," I said. "Tomorrow. I've already made arrangements with Mark. We're going to start over." David's face was a mix of panic and desperation. "Can't we work this out? I'll get help. I'll do whatever it takes." I shook my head. "No, David. This is over. I've made up my mind." With that, I stood up and walked towards the bedroom. I could hear David's frustrated mutterings as I left, but I didn't turn back. I had to remain strong, not just for myself but for Ella. That night, while David sulked in the guest room, I went to bed with a heavy heart. I knew the road ahead would be challenging, but I was determined to take control of my life. The following day, Mark arrived early to help with the move. He had a look of quiet resolve as he packed up our belongings, his presence a steady anchor amidst the chaos. Ella, oblivious to the full extent of what was happening, was busy with her toys, her innocent laughter a stark contrast to the turmoil unfolding around her. David tried to reach out to me multiple times during the day, pleading and bargaining, but I remained resolute. I had deactivated my business credit card and made sure to secure our finances before David could get his hands on any more of my money. By evening, the house was almost empty. Mark and I had packed up everything we needed and were ready to leave. David, still furious and desperate, tried to stop us, but I refused to be swayed. As I packed the last of Ella's things into the car, I felt a mix of relief and sadness. This chapter of my life was closing, and though it was painful, it was also a step towards a new beginning. The confrontation had been tough, but it was necessary. As we drove away from our old home, I glanced in the rearview mirror, my heart heavy but hopeful. I was leaving behind the pain and betrayal, determined to start fresh and build a better future for Ella and me. The first few days after moving out were a whirlwind of emotions and logistics. Mark and I found a cozy apartment in a quiet neighborhood of Portland, one that felt like a fresh start. It was a far cry from the home we'd left behind, but it had a warmth and simplicity that I hoped would ease the transition for Ella. The day after we moved in, David's calls and messages started pouring in. Each one was a mixture of desperation and anger. He wanted to know why I'd cut him off financially and demanded to see Ella. I couldn't bear to see him or hear his voice, so I ignored his calls and focused on making our new place feel like home. Mark was a huge help, handling the heavy lifting and keeping things calm. He made sure Ella felt comfortable and secure in her new environment, setting up her room and playing with her. His presence was a source of strength, and I was grateful for his support during this difficult time. Despite the chaos, I tried to keep Ella's routine as normal as possible. I enrolled her in a new school nearby and started to introduce her to the neighborhood. She was adjusting well, but I could tell she missed the familiarity of her old life. I tried to reassure her with extra cuddles and bedtime stories, doing everything I could to keep her spirits up. A few weeks after the move, I received an unexpected call from Rebecca. It was late one evening, and I was tucking Ella into bed when my phone rang. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. "Jessica, it's Rebecca," she said, her voice tight with frustration. "I need to talk to you." "What do you want?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm angry, Jessica," she said. "David's things were sent to my house, and now my husband knows everything. We're getting a divorce." "You made sure of that." I could hear the hurt and anger in her voice, and a part of me felt a pang of sympathy. "I'm sorry for what you're going through, Rebecca. But you and David made your choices. I had to protect myself and Ella." Rebecca's voice softened slightly. "I didn't expect David to drag me into all this. I was hoping we could figure things out. But now everything is falling apart." I could tell she was struggling, and for a moment, I felt a flicker of empathy. "I hope you find a way to move forward. It's not easy for any of us." We ended the call shortly after, leaving me with a sense of mixed emotions. While I felt justified in my actions, the reality of the situation was sobering. Rebecca was dealing with her own fallout, and the mess David had created was affecting more lives than just ours. As days turned into weeks, the complications continued. David kept calling and sending messages, each more frantic than the last. He threatened legal action, claiming I was depriving him of his parental rights. I was prepared for such threats and had consulted a lawyer to ensure that Ella's well-being was legally protected. One afternoon, while I was working from home, my lawyer called with an update. "Jessica, I've reviewed David's claims. He's trying to contest the custody arrangements, but given the circumstances and his recent behavior, it's unlikely he'll succeed." I breathed a sigh of relief. "Thank you for handling this. I just want to focus on Ella and give her a stable environment." "That's the right approach," my lawyer assured me. "Keep documenting everything, and we'll get through this." Despite the legal battles, life slowly began to settle into a new routine. Ella and I attended local events, made new friends, and started to find our rhythm. I continued working hard at my job, determined to keep my career on track while providing for my daughter. One evening, as I was finishing up some paperwork, Mark came by for a visit. He brought dinner and, more importantly, a reassuring presence. "How's everything going?" he asked, setting down the bags of food. "Busy but manageable," I replied. "Ella seems to be settling in well. I think she's finally starting to feel more at home here." Mark smiled. "That's good to hear. I'm glad you're making progress." As we sat down to eat, I reflected on the journey so far. The confrontation with David had been necessary, but it had set off a chain reaction of challenges and adjustments. I was navigating a new life, one that was filled with uncertainties, but also with hope. The holidays were approaching, and I was determined to make them special for Ella. We decorated our apartment with festive lights and ornaments, creating a cozy and cheerful atmosphere. I wanted her to have a sense of joy and normalcy during this time of transition. As the season changed and the new year approached, I felt a cautious optimism. The road ahead would still have its hurdles, but I was ready to face them head-on. With Mark's support and my determination, I was building a new foundation for Ella and me, one step at a time. The aftermath of David's betrayal had been challenging, but it was also a time of growth and resilience. I was learning to navigate this new chapter in my life, committed to providing a better future for my daughter while standing strong in the face of adversity. As the new year began, I felt a renewed sense of purpose and determination. The legal issues were gradually settling down, and the apartment was becoming more like home with each passing day. Ella was adjusting well, and I was determined to make sure our lives were as stable and happy as possible. David's calls had become less frequent, and I had managed to cut off all financial ties with him. I had made it clear that I would no longer entertain any discussions about reconciliation or financial support. It was time for both of us to move on. The focus now was on rebuilding our lives and finding a sense of normalcy. One afternoon, I received an unexpected letter from David's lawyer. It was an official notice of his intent to contest the custody arrangement. My heart sank as I read the words, feeling a wave of anxiety. I had hoped we could avoid further legal battles, but it seemed David was determined to fight. I immediately contacted my lawyer to discuss the situation. "Jessica, don't worry," she said, her voice calm and reassuring. "We've anticipated this move. We have strong evidence of your commitment to Ella's well-being, and the court will take that into account." Despite her reassurance, the process was draining. I spent countless hours gathering documents, reviewing records, and preparing for the court hearings. Mark remained my rock throughout this ordeal, offering emotional support and practical help. He attended meetings with me and helped care for Ella, making sure I could focus on the legal aspects of the case. The court hearings were tense and emotionally charged. David's lawyer argued that I was trying to deprive him of his parental rights, but I presented my evidence showing that my primary concern was Ella's stability and well-being. I highlighted David's past behavior and the negative impact it had on our family. During one particularly difficult hearing, David took the stand. He looked worn and defeated, and I couldn't help but feel a mixture of sadness and relief. As he spoke, it became clear that his attempts to justify his actions were falling short. The court saw through his attempts to manipulate the situation. The turning point came when the judge ruled in my favor, affirming the custody arrangement and recognizing my commitment to providing a stable environment for Ella. I felt a profound sense of relief as the decision was announced. It was a victory, but it was also a reminder of the hard road we had traveled. With the custody issue resolved, I turned my focus back to rebuilding our lives. Ella and I continued to settle into our new routine, and I worked hard to create a positive environment for her. We started participating in local activities, joined a community center, and made new friends. One evening, as Ella and I decorated for the next holiday, she looked up at me with a bright smile. "Mom, I really like our new home. It feels so warm and happy." My heart swelled with pride and relief. "I'm glad, sweetheart. I want us to be happy and to make the most of this new chapter in our lives." Ella hugged me tightly, and in that moment, I knew we had made it through the toughest part. Despite the challenges and heartbreak, we were moving forward and finding our own path to happiness. As for David and Rebecca, their lives continued to unravel. Rebecca's marriage had ended, and David struggled with the consequences of his actions. They faced their own set of difficulties, but that was no longer my concern. My focus was on Ella and building a future that was full of hope and possibility. The final months of the year brought a sense of closure and renewal. I finalized the divorce, secured child support, and continued to advance in my career. The apartment was now a place of comfort and security, a symbol of our new beginning. Looking back, I could see how far we had come. The journey had been painful and challenging, but it had also been a period of profound growth and resilience. I had learned to stand up for myself and protect what mattered most. Through the heartbreak and adversity, I had found a renewed sense of self-respect and determination. As I tucked Ella into bed one night, I reflected on our journey. We've been through a lot, haven't we? Ella nodded sleepily. Yeah, but we're doing great, Mom. I love our new life. I kissed her goodnight and smiled, feeling a deep sense of contentment. We had faced the storms and come out stronger. The future was still uncertain, but it was full of promise and opportunity. With Ella by my side and the support of those who cared for us, I knew we were ready for whatever came next. The past was behind us, and the future was ours to shape. As I closed the door to her room, I felt a sense of peace, knowing that we had truly begun a new chapter in our lives. My sister stole my personal items and money from my lockbox. After secretly collecting evidence, I exposed her at a family gathering, only for my husband to erupt in anger, shouting and siding with her. He slapped me hard, knocking me to the ground. I decided on revenge, but just before the police arrived, something unexpected happened that changed everything. Hi, I'm Rachel, a 34-year-old fashion consultant living in sunny Los Angeles. Life here often feels like a dream: warm weather, beautiful beaches, and a vibrant social scene. My husband, Chris, is a high-ranking software engineer, and we've built a life together that many would envy. We live in a gorgeous home filled with modern decor, and our weekends are usually packed with brunches, parties, and outings with friends. Everything appeared to be perfect, or at least that's what I thought. But life has a way of throwing unexpected challenges our way. It all started when Chris's sister, Megan, lost her job. She's 29 and had been struggling to find stable work for a while, so when she reached out asking if she could stay with us, I felt compelled to say yes. After all, family is important, right? Little did I know, saying yes would set off a chain of events that would shatter my perception of my perfect life. Megan moved in shortly after losing her job. At first, I was hopeful that having her around would strengthen our family bond. We tried to make her feel comfortable by including her in our daily routines. But soon, I began to notice strange things happening around the house. It started with my favorite luxury watch. I had left it on the dresser one night, only to find it missing the next morning. When I asked Megan about it, she laughed and said, "Oh, I thought it was mine. My bad." I brushed it off, thinking it was just a silly mistake. After all, who would think twice about a watch? But that was just the beginning. As days passed, I started noticing other items disappearing: my diamond ring, makeup, even a designer handbag. Each time I confronted Megan, she waved it off, insisting it was an honest mistake. "I'm sorry, Rachel. I didn't mean to take your things. I just got confused." Chris always seemed to side with her, which made my skin crawl. "Babe, you know Megan's going through a tough time. You shouldn't jump to conclusions," he would say, dismissing my concerns. The real turning point came when I discovered money missing from my personal lockbox. I had always kept a stash of cash there, mostly for emergencies, but one day I found a few $1,500 bills gone. Panic set in, and I couldn't shake the feeling that Megan was somehow involved. I confronted Chris about it, my voice trembling. "Chris, I think Megan has been stealing from me. I'm missing money." He barely looked up from his laptop. "Maybe you just forgot you spent it, Rachel. You know how it is. Sometimes we miscount," he replied casually. I felt my heart sink. My own husband didn't believe me. It felt like I was losing my grip on reality, and that's when I realized something was seriously wrong. Chris was blind to the manipulation happening under our roof, and it made me question everything. Frustration boiled inside me, and I decided I had to take matters into my own hands. I devised a plan to catch Megan red-handed. I bought some invisible ink and carefully marked a few $1,500 bills. I also set up a hidden camera in my walk-in closet, where the lockbox was located. I knew this was a risk, but I had to know the truth. Days turned into a week, and I was on edge. Each day, I would come home and check the footage, heart racing, hoping for a glimpse of what was happening in my own home. Finally, on the fourth day, I got my first real break. There she was, Megan, boldly rummaging through my lockbox. She took the marked bills, and even one of my rings. My heart pounded as I watched the betrayal unfold before my eyes. "Got you," I whispered to myself, determination flooding my veins. Armed with this proof, I felt a mix of anger and relief. It was time to confront Megan. I found her in the living room, casually scrolling through her phone. "Megan, we need to talk," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "What's up?" she replied with a disinterested tone, still not looking up. "I know you've been taking money from my lockbox," I said, my heart racing. "I have proof." Her eyes narrowed, and for a second, I could see the mask slipping. "What do you mean?" "That's crazy. I would never do that." I took a deep breath, my hands trembling slightly. "I've got it all on camera. You can either come clean or we can do this the hard way." Her bravado faltered for a moment, and then she forced a laugh. "You think I'm scared of some footage? Good luck convincing Chris. He'll never believe you over his sister." Her words hit me like a slap in the face. I felt a deep sense of betrayal, not just from her but from Chris as well. I couldn't believe how twisted this situation had become. I was not just fighting for my belongings but for my dignity and sanity. The tension in the air thickened as I realized that my confrontation with Megan was just the beginning. The battle lines were drawn, and I was ready to expose the truth. But little did I know, this would lead to a confrontation that would change everything. As I lay in bed that night, a mix of emotions swirled inside me: anger, frustration, and a newfound determination. I had to take action before it was too late. The following family gathering was just around the corner, and I decided then and there that I would reveal everything. But in doing so, I couldn't help but wonder what the fallout would be. Would Chris finally believe me? Or would this lead to an even greater betrayal? Only time would tell. The day of the family gathering arrived, and I felt a knot in my stomach. It was supposed to be a joyful occasion, a chance to celebrate Chris's recent promotion at work, but all I could think about was the confrontation that awaited me. Chris's family would be there, and I knew this was my opportunity to finally expose Megan. I could hardly sleep the night before, rehearsing what I would say in my head. Would they believe me? Would Chris finally stand by my side? As I dressed that morning, I chose a navy blue dress that hugged my curves just right. It made me feel confident, as if I could face whatever lay ahead. Chris walked into the bedroom, smiling. "You look beautiful, Ratch," he said, planting a kiss on my forehead. His words should have comforted me, but instead, they felt like a mask hiding the tension between us. "Thanks, Chris. I just hope everything goes well today," I replied, forcing a smile. "Of course. Everyone is excited to see you," he said, oblivious to the storm brewing in my mind. When we arrived at his parents' house, the atmosphere was lively. Chris's mom, Karen, was bustling around in the kitchen, and the smell of grilled meat filled the air. Relatives mingled in the backyard, sipping drinks and catching up. I forced myself to be social, chatting with Chris's cousins and laughing at their jokes, but my mind was elsewhere. As the afternoon wore on, I caught glimpses of Megan chatting animatedly with the family, her laughter ringing out as if nothing was amiss. I felt my blood boil. How could she act so carefree when she had been stealing from me? I glanced at Chris, who was completely engrossed in a conversation about work, blissfully unaware of the drama lurking beneath the surface. Finally, it was time for the main event, the toast for Chris's promotion. Everyone gathered around, glasses in hand, and I took a deep breath, my heart racing. This was it. As Chris stood up to speak, I felt a wave of determination wash over me. "Thanks, everyone, for coming. It means a lot to have my family here to celebrate this achievement," Chris began, and the crowd erupted in cheers. I watched him beam with pride, and for a moment, I felt a pang of nostalgia for the man I fell in love with. After the toast, Chris raised his glass again. "I just want to say how grateful I am for my amazing sister, Megan. She's always been there for me. That was my cue. As applause filled the air, I stood up, feeling the weight of every eye in the room turn toward me. I need to say something too, I announced, my voice shaking slightly. It's important. Chris's smile faltered, and he looked at me, confusion etched on his face. Rachel, maybe now isn't the time.
No, Chris.
It's time to address some things, I interrupted, my heart pounding in my chest. Megan has been stealing from me. I have proof. Gasps filled the room, and Megan's face turned pale. What are you talking about? She exclaimed, her voice rising in pitch. You can't just accuse me like that. I'm not accusing you without evidence, I shot back, pulling out my phone. I have video footage of you taking money from my lockbox. And don't think I'm not aware of the jewelry you've borrowed. I connected my phone to the TV, and the screen lit up with the footage of Megan rummaging through my closet. The room fell silent as everyone watched, eyes wide with shock. I felt a mixture of relief and dread. This was the moment I had been waiting for, but I couldn't shake the fear of how Chris would react. See, I said, pointing at the screen. That's you, Megan. Taking my money. How can you deny this? Megan's face twisted in anger. You set me up. This is insane. You're just trying to ruin my life, she shouted, but her voice lacked the confidence it had before. Before I could respond, Chris stood up, his face flushed with anger. You did this? You humiliated her in front of everyone? What's wrong with you, Rachel? He yelled, his words hitting me like a slap. You're a liar. You've always been so dramatic. Stunned, I stared at him. Chris, this isn't about me. It's about the truth. She's been stealing from us. But he wasn't listening. You've turned my family against me. How could you do this? He continued, his voice rising. Then, in a shocking twist, he slapped me hard across the face. The room fell completely silent, and I felt a mixture of shock and disbelief wash over me. I had never imagined Chris would do something like that. The gasps from family members echoed in my ears, but my world had narrowed down to Chris and his furious expression. Get out of my house, Rachel. I want a divorce, he said, his voice cold and firm. The words struck me like a lightning bolt. In that moment, everything felt surreal. I had thought I would finally expose Megan's deceit and reclaim my life, but instead, I was being thrown out of the very life I had built with Chris. Tears streamed down my cheeks as I grabbed my things and headed for the door. The shocked faces of my family-in-law blurred together, and all I could hear was the pounding of my heart. Megan, meanwhile, wore a victorious smirk, knowing she had manipulated this situation to her advantage. As I stepped outside, the world felt heavy. I could hardly breathe. I had stood up for myself, but it had cost me everything. As I walked away from the house, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of a much larger battle. I would have to find a way to regain my dignity and strength, even if it meant facing Chris and Megan again. After that night, everything felt different. I left Chris's parents' house with my heart shattered, my mind racing, and my emotions swirling. I drove aimlessly around Los Angeles. The city that once felt like my playground now seemed foreign and cold. How had it come to this? I never imagined standing up for myself would lead to such a painful outcome. But I knew one thing: I couldn't let this defeat define me. I spent the night at a hotel, my heart heavy with betrayal. The following morning, as I stared at my reflection in the mirror, I realized I had a choice. I could either wallow in despair or fight back. Anger surged through me, igniting a fire that I hadn't felt before. I grabbed my phone and called Lisa, my best friend since college. She always had a way of lifting me up, and I needed her now more than ever. Rachel, thank God you called. I was so worried about you, Lisa said, her voice a soothing balm to my frayed nerves. I'm a mess, Lisa. Chris slapped me and told me he wants a divorce. I don't even know where to begin, I confessed, my voice shaky. You're stronger than you think. You need to take control of this situation. Have you considered getting a lawyer? She suggested. I know I should, but I'm scared, I admitted. What if I lose everything? Rachel, this is about your dignity and safety. You need to protect yourself. I'll help you find someone, Lisa reassured me. With her encouragement, I found a divorce attorney Karen, who specialized in cases involving emotional and physical abuse. When I walked into her office, I felt a sense of purpose. "I want to file for divorce," I told her, my voice steady. Karen listened attentively, taking notes as I recounted the events that had led me to this point. "It's important to document everything, Rachel. We need to establish a pattern of his behavior," she said, her tone professional yet compassionate. "I also want to press charges for the slap. I can't let him get away with that," I declared, feeling empowered. "Absolutely. We can work on that as well. It's essential to hold him accountable for his actions," Karen replied, and I felt a surge of relief wash over me. I was finally taking control of my life. As the weeks went by, I immersed myself in work and the legal process. I was determined to rise in my fashion consulting career, channeling my energy into projects that inspired me. The long hours paid off. My boss noticed my dedication and soon promoted me to a senior position. The sense of accomplishment fueled my determination to move forward. Meanwhile, things were not going well for Chris and Megan. Word of Megan's theft began to spread within their family, and I learned through Lisa that she had been caught embezzling money from her new job. "She's facing serious charges, Rachel," Lisa told me one day over coffee. "People are talking about it, and Chris isn't doing well either. His firm is losing clients because of all this drama." Hearing that news was bittersweet. I couldn't deny feeling a sense of satisfaction knowing that Megan was facing consequences, but I also worried about Chris. Despite everything, I still cared about him. I knew he had been manipulated by his sister, but I also recognized that I could no longer be the one to fix things for him. Then one evening, as I was settling into my new apartment, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Chris. "Can we talk?" I made a huge mistake. My heart raced at the thought of him reaching out, but I also felt a wall of defense rise within me. "Rachel, don't do it," Lisa warned when I told her. "You've come so far. Don't let him pull you back in." "You're right. I have to think about my own well-being," I reminded myself. But part of me still hesitated. A few days later, I received an unexpected knock on my door. When I opened it, there stood Chris, looking disheveled and broken. "Rachel, I need to explain," he started, his voice shaky. "I don't want to hear it, Chris. You made your choice," I said firmly, feeling a sense of clarity wash over me. "I know I messed up. I should have believed you. I should have stood by you," he pleaded. I shook my head. "You didn't. And now, I need to focus on myself." His face fell, and I could see the pain in his eyes. But I had to stay strong. "Please leave, Chris," I said, my voice unwavering. As I closed the door, I felt a mix of sadness and relief. I was moving on, reclaiming my life piece by piece. I realized that this was my journey now, and I would continue to fight for my happiness and self-respect, no matter the challenges ahead. Months passed, and the dust began to settle on my tumultuous life. I focused on rebuilding, both personally and professionally. My divorce proceedings were underway, and each day I felt more empowered as I took steps to create a future that was truly my own. My legal battles were a mix of anxiety and hope, but I was determined not to let fear overshadow my journey. One afternoon, I received a call from Karen, my lawyer. "Rachel, I have some news. We've secured a settlement agreement with Chris," she said. My heart raced. "You'll receive a fair share of the assets, and we'll ensure there's a restraining order in place regarding any contact from him." "Thank you, Karen. This means a lot," I replied, my voice thick with emotion. I had fought so hard to get to this point, and now it felt like I was finally free from the chains of my past. That evening, I decided to celebrate this small victory. I called Lisa and invited her over for a little housewarming party. "We need to toast to your new life," she exclaimed, excitement evident in her voice. I spent the next few hours preparing appetizers and arranging flowers, relishing the calm and joy that filled my new apartment. When Lisa arrived, she brought a bottle of champagne. "To new beginnings," she said, raising her glass. "And to kicking toxic people out of your life." We laughed and reminisced about our college days, enjoying the freedom of being ourselves. For the first time in a long while, I felt genuinely happy. A few weeks later, While out for a morning walk with my newly adopted rescue dog, Benny, I ran into an old acquaintance, Mark, from the fashion industry. Rachel, it's been ages. How have you been? He asked, a genuine smile lighting up his face. I'm doing well, actually. Just got out of a rough patch, I said, trying to keep it light. Rough patch. I heard about Chris and Megan. You've shown incredible strength, Rachel, he said, his eyes filled with admiration. Thanks, Mark. I'm learning to prioritize my happiness, I replied, a sense of pride swelling within me. We ended up grabbing coffee together, and as we talked, I felt a connection that I hadn't experienced in a long time. We exchanged numbers, and for the first time, I allowed myself to be open to the possibility of new relationships. One evening, I received an unexpected message from Chris. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I realize now how much I hurt you. I hope you find happiness, it read. My heart twisted at his words. I didn't want to relive the pain, but I also recognized that he was finally acknowledging the hurt he had caused. I took a deep breath, deciding to respond with kindness, but also clarity. Thank you, Chris. I appreciate your message, but I need to focus on myself now. I wish you well, but I cannot go back. I hit send, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. I was closing the door on the past, once and for all. As I settled down for the night, Benny curled up beside me, and I reflected on everything I had been through. I realized that this journey wasn't just about survival, it was about transformation. I had learned the importance of self-respect and the power of standing up for myself, even when it felt like the world was against me. With each passing day, I felt stronger, more capable, and ready to embrace whatever life had in store. I had faced betrayal, but I had also found resilience. In reclaiming my life, I discovered that sometimes losing everything is the first step toward finding yourself and building a brighter, more empowered future. As I drifted off to sleep that night, I felt a deep sense of peace. The road ahead was unknown, but I was ready to face it, one step at a time.